Today on Voices for Change, the Season 4 premiere. We're celebrating Black History Month with an exhibit honoring Black innovators.
These bookmarks about our inventors hold the place in time and history.
Plus, the Hoops coach creating space for representation, conversation, and social justice.
You have to stand up and speak out. And so in me doing that, I think it just creates that type of environment where my players see that from me.
And grassroots game design, preparing bold new voices for careers in video games.
The gaming companies gotta put some energy into these communities, and the best way to do it is to go grassroots.
Welcome to Voices for Change. I'm Greg Lee. We're excited to launch our 4th season of a show that's allowed us to give a megaphone to the marginalized. Our hope is to have long-form conversations about issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and our mission remains the same. Before we dive into today's episode, we'd like to take a look back at some of our favorite moments from Season 3.
I think it's definitely important that the game keeps evolving and changing and, keeps having an open mind and including and being inclusive to all different types of people.
When women are able to provide their creativity, their perspective, their skills to the kind of solutions that we need for the future, we have a better world.
The community at large can include us more, can include deaf professionals, deaf actors, deaf talent.
The number of qualified minority coaches that are just waiting on an opportunity to be interviewed.
Unless you put yourself in there or put yourself out there, then you don't really have that voice to say something.
We're celebrating Black History Month, and at the San Francisco Public Library, a special exhibition called Black Excellence, Black Invention, inspired by the bookmarks honoring Black innovators created by Dr. Carolyn Ransom Scott. The display pays homage to Black inventors who may have been left out of the history books.
Sean and Dr. Scott, thank you so much for taking the time. Sean, I want to start with you quickly, and sort of the overall theme during this Black History Month at the library is more than a month. How important is it to celebrate culture and heritage all year long?
Thanks, Greg. It's very important. We call it more than a month here because I work for the African American Center at the library, and we're on the 3rd floor of the main library. And it was a center created in 1996 by when the new library was built by a bunch of community members who wanted a place in the library to celebrate Black culture. So yeah, we do programs all year round because we want to always be celebrating and educating people about Black history. It's not just in the month of February, which everybody says is always the shortest month of the year.
Yeah, that's right. Dr. Scott, this exhibition, Black Excellence, Black Invention, celebrates stories of Black inventors that are often overlooked. So what drove you to curate this beautiful exhibition?
When you think of 200 years, we just keep going. We never give up and we never get tired. We pass the baton with a purpose and a goal, but never to give up and do it with the highest of dignity. So I don't know if you've had any opportunity to see the bookmarks or the exhibit, but it's done with the highest of honor and dignity as if it was to be sitting in the White House. These things motivate me, inspire me to carry on and look for the hope that young people can see all of the innovative work, the creations, the inventions, putting the first man on the moon, those men, and knowing exactly where they would land and helping to design the spaceship so that it would come back and telling the team where it would land when it returned. Our air conditioning, the light above your head, Greg, just the fact that we hear each other in this computer. We've even found the godfather of the Silicon Valley was African American with a huge team.
Shauna, the other theme at the library in this Black History Month is resistance. So can you tell us how this exhibition represents that and how you want the next generation to feel when they see this exhibition?
In doing the research for the exhibit and the bookmarks, we realized that Black people, African Americans were inventing during some of the most violent periods in our history, and like, the Jim Crow period. So, the act of inventing during that time is an act of resistance, because, these people just continued to push forward and continued to innovate, even in the face of, some very heavy racism. Some folks like Garrett Morgan, who invented the electrical stoplight, a belt for the sewing machine, and a gas mask. When he came up with his products, he had to actually hire white people to go and try to sell them, because people wouldn't accept the sale from an African American. So, it's this continual push to innovate while in the face of racism, I think, that really embodies resistance.
What better way to celebrate Black History Month than with the Black Joy Parade? The parade returns for its 6th year in downtown Oakland. The event celebrates the Black experience and community's contribution to history and culture. The celebration will feature Black vendors and entertainment. Everything kicks off at 12:30. Shamon Wright grew up in East Oakland. The former foster youth was formerly incarcerated, then says he turned his life around, playing college football and getting his master's degree. He took these experiences and founded Bridge Builders to the New Generation, a way to support underserved youth and change the narrative.
You've really got a remarkable personal story. You grew up in East Oakland. Tell folks a little bit more about what led you to what you're doing today.
So I'll say that growing up in East Oakland, in an urban community, low income community where there was a lot of violent crimes, drugs, a lot of times I tend to see a lot of my peers and my family fall victim to their environments. My father, who was incarcerated, my mother, she went through a whole lot, like dealing with that in regards to like drug abuse, mental health. And so for myself, I ended up kind of falling into that same footsteps. And I ended up getting, incarcerated myself. But prior to that, my mother, she was incarcerated, and me and my brothers had to go to a group home. We were in homeless shelters. So there was no real true guidance. And I felt like for myself, one day I just wanted to turn it around. And I wanted to really help young people so they never have to go through the same or anything similar to what I went through as a kid.
You started Bridge Builders to the New Generation.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the title, but tell us about the work that you're doing for the young people in the community.
Most definitely. So I think before I go in that, I think it's important for me to really talk about the backstory to it. So, playing football in college, and then being having the ability to go play in the CFL and play arena as well. A lot of times, a lot of our young Black scholars, I wouldn't say our scholars, but we have this thing what we call an athletic identity. And when we turn on the television, a lot of times we see people that look like us, that talk like us, that come from our communities. And a lot of times, like, we feel like the only way for us to be successful is to be a professional athlete. And so when sports was done for me, I went through a deep depression. And I felt like in my life, I would never want anybody else to go through that. So for me, it was like, how can I go ahead and deprogram our young Black males and young Black females to reprogram them to see all the many possibilities out there for them? And that's when I started Bridge Builders to the New Generation, because I felt like I wanted to expose our students to higher education. A lot of times their parents never went to higher education. They never stepped foot on the college campus. I also wanted to make sure that we explore different college, not colleges, but different careers out there for our young people as well, because I wanted to make sure that they actually have an understanding that there's so many different opportunities out there. We just want to present those opportunities to them. And so for me, I just want to make sure that they have an opportunity to grow as an individual. They have an opportunity to control their own narrative and not let anybody control that for them. And they could be their true and authentic selves in anywhere they go.
It takes all of us, right? Not just Shamon, not just one organization, but everyone in the community to ensure that young people are successful. So what is your message to the community about helping you continue to lead this work?
So it takes a village, like you said. It takes a village. A lot of times, our youth, they're our future. And for some of our young people that don't have any guidance, that might fall victim to their environment, we have to understand that sometimes, like, there's certain things that they cannot control. And I feel like if we're able to pour in the resources, if we're able to dedicate our time, and if we're able to look back at our lives and think about what was something that I wish somebody would have did for me. And so for me, I just want everybody to know that, you all have a role in how we push the needle forward in helping up our next generation so they could thrive in life and be successful in whatever case that may look like for them.
Continue to open doors for other kids growing up to follow their dreams and be a quarterback of an NFL team.
Coming up, a historic Super Bowl, a moment decades in the making, plus
trying to be the change that I would like to see, which is just empowering people to realize they can be a part of this industry.
And still to come, the Bay Area baker who used his pain to drive his passion. He's baking more than bread. He's sprouting seeds of change. Stay with us.
To be on the world stage and have two black quarterbacks starting in the Super Bowl, I think it's special. The guys that came before me and Jalen set the stage for this.
I think it's history. I think it's something that's worthy of being noted, and it is history. It's come a long way. I think there's only been 7 African-American quarterbacks to play in the Super Bowl, so to be the first for some is pretty cool.
History made it Super Bowl 57. For the first time, 2 black quarterbacks started in a Super Bowl as the Chiefs' Pat Mahomes faced off against the Eagles' Jalen Hurts. In the days leading up to the game, both men gave credit to the trailblazers who came before them. People like Doug Williams, Warren Moon, and Shaq Harris. And while this moment deserves recognition and marks progress, many agree the NFL still has work to do, especially when it comes to diversity in coaching.
It really allows for me to pay homage to those who paved the way, that very checkered path that quarterbacks like Shaq Harris, who actually paved the way for Doug Williams, who was the first black quarterback to start an opening season roster and also to play in a playoff game. And even before him, people like Marion Motley and Fritz Pollard. It goes way back into the archives in terms of African-American players who had a very troubled pathway that led the way. Yes, while we're seeing some progress, I have to point to signals like I only see Mike Tomlin. I only see DeMeco Ryans. I only see Todd Bowles as coaches who identify as African-American still in the league.
In the NCAA, out of 6,754 Division I head coaches, only 228 are black women. This is a reality Cal women's basketball head coach Sharman Smith knows well. She started the Raising the Bar Invitational to elevate black female coaches and spur conversations on social justice.
Coach, thanks for taking the time. I want to start with the Raising the Bar Invitational basketball activism representation. Why is this such a near and dear project to your heart?
Well, it essentially started the summer of 2020 with all of the social justice unrest and the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. I think, when everyone was on their couch watching these instances, then people started having conversations. And then when we got back to our lives and COVID, kind of slowed down a little bit, I didn't think that people were continuing to have the conversation. I didn't think that much had changed in our country. So I wanted to create an opportunity or a platform where these conversations could continue to be had and people would address our issues. And in my sport, representation is one of the biggest issues. And so the Raising the Bar Invitational tries to highlight that issue with 4 black female head coaches in the tournament.
This is twofold, and I want to start with that piece, the disparity in numbers of black female coaches in this sport across the board. Yeah. How much more needs to be done as it pertains to recruitment, training, keeping coaches in?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of qualified Black female coaches out there, and it's a problem with a lot of athletic departments in which they don't do their work to find those candidates, and we do what's easy. We hire people that look like us. We hire people that we know, instead of being inclusive and thinking about representation in a sport that is 45% Black females.
The other part of this is about having those conversations and continuing that dialogue. As long as I've known you, you've been outspoken about these social justice issues. How important is it for you to create a space off the court for your players to be willing to have those conversations?
I think really what I do is just try to be myself and do what I think is right. And I've been taught by my mentors and people that I respect that you have to stand up and speak out. And so in me doing that, I think it just creates that type of environment where my players see that from me and know that it's okay for them to do that as well.
Can we talk about that space that you've created? Not only players to bring concerns to you, but perhaps to enlighten discussion and have questions about what is going on in our society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have our circle represents our core values, and we have something that we call Circle Up Conversations with our team, in which it's not about basketball. And we've talked about issues within our society, we've talked about music, we've talked about anything. And I want us to have that type of family environment where we can talk about the fun, the light stuff, but also the heavy things that weigh on your heart. And know that we support each other and we're there for one another.
What would be your advice to other coaches that are just getting started, or those that are looking to create a more inclusive space to have these discussions from what you've learned?
I think it's listen and do the work. There are things out there that people just tend to ignore and accept that that's the way things are. And it's not. It doesn't have to be that way. So really listening and then doing your work and your research to find out how you can be a part of the solution.
A better way to celebrate Black History Month than by supporting Black-owned businesses. Ezekwe Anderson, or Z as his friends call him, used baking to cope with the pandemic and social unrest. He quickly realized his sourdough bread can bring joy to people and foster change.
Like many of us, you started baking during the pandemic, but it also was sort of therapeutic for you, especially after the murder of George Floyd. Tell me about what that has meant to you.
Yeah, so there was a moment being stuck inside where I couldn't get through a day without crying or feeling like I wanted to throw something through a wall. And, I was there with my children and they were watching me kind of go through it. The death of George Floyd brought up a lot of past trauma in me. It also kind of made me realize that the world doesn't see people like me the way that I would like to be seen. So then I started to take all that angst and all that sadness and all that frustration, and I realized that it wasn't healthy for me and I needed to do something with it. And so I would disappear for 4-6 hours at a time and collect my thoughts, and kind of baking became my zen. I feel like I can make the world a better place, one beautiful loaf of bread at a time, and that's what it's turned into. We have a pay it forward program where people can buy themselves a loaf and then also purchase a loaf to be donated to homeless shelters or battered women's shelter or elder centers. So I just really like the idea of rallying around and being there for each other. And I feel that the world is seeing that and believing in it, and they got my back.
What does it mean to sort of create this space for creativity, especially with other Black bakers?
I had never seen an artisan baker. I'd never seen a baker that was a Black baker, right? So, and it wasn't that, that's just my own world. I had never seen it. Doesn't mean that there aren't, but it definitely wasn't taught to me that I can make a difference, that I can enjoy this, that this could be a fruitful part of my life. And so as I started to learn this about baking and it became my every waking moment, I kind of felt bamboozled a little bit, like, how is it that I made it this far and no one ever told me that this could be an option of something that would be enjoyable in my life? So now I'm very set on trying to be the change that I would like to see, which is just empowering people to realize they can be a part of this industry. They could be a part of the cultural and the scene of food in general in San Francisco. Like, I feel so much pride to be a part of to get to make a difference, to get to actually make something beautiful, to shine light on flavor profiles and from certain parts of the world that otherwise get overlooked. So yeah, I wear it as an honor that that my perspective on the world is actually validated.
The game industry is like, catch up. You know what I mean? Like, this is what the world wants to see.
Still to come, developing diverse talent for the video game industry. The Bay Area organization preparing young people to thrive in tech. As the tech and gaming industries continue to evaluate diversity efforts, one Oakland-based organization is at the grassroots level training the next generation. Gameheads uses video game design to prepare low-income youth and youth of color to succeed in their field of choice.
You have been working in youth development and education for a long time, but tell me what drove you to start Gameheads.
Yeah, I remember, I'm born and raised in San Francisco, and I remember when the tech industry started blowing up in San Francisco. I'm not a digital native, so we didn't really know what it was. And I remember, there was a lot of fear of the tech industry, but I kind of saw the excitement in it because, after a while you start to realize that there was a lack of diversity. And I was like, well, this sounds like an opportunity as opposed to something that's bad. But there was a big push to get kids to learn how to code. And I was like, some of these kids, they don't want to code, right? Like they're really good artists. They're really good animators. They like making beats. They like writing stories. But if you translate all of those skills that all these kids have in the neighborhood, and they have it because their brothers and their cousins have it, those are jobs in the gaming industry, and they just so happen to love video games. The percentage of African Americans in the game industry is like 2%. The percentage of Latinx folks are 7%. The percentage of Asian folks are like 9%. Women are about like 22%. But if you look at the people that play video games, right, like people of color actually over-index in as far as games is concerned. Like there's like crazy data from Comcast where they're like, when they look at the neighborhoods by area code that are playing, or by zip code that are playing the most video games, they are the neighborhoods where the majority of like African American, Latinx, Asian Americans, and mixed folks live.
How important is it for you, an organization like yours, to remove those barriers, specifically for low-income communities that may not have access to the technology, the computers, the knowledge that you do?
Yeah, there's a saying that the video game industry is a luxury industry that requires luxury tools. And it's like the software is expensive, the hardware is expensive, the games are expensive, right? So, and then there's just like, once you get the hardware, the software, and the games, you have to find people that can teach it, and those people are expensive. So you can't expect for low-income students of color to be able to do this on their own. In some cases, their parents don't even think that this is a viable career, right? Like that's why parents are sending their kids to college, and they're like, we want you to be a doctor or an engineer, but there's all these other industries that they can be a part of that they're not as familiar with. So it's very, very important to have, organizations like Gameheads, and there's others in the Bay Area as well around tech that can provide these sort of things to low-income students of color. The talent is out there. The problem is that either the talent has not accepted that this is a viable career because you're not kind of focused on them and teaching them why it's a viable career, or they've heard some stories about how the industry doesn't treat them very well, right? So they're deciding to be elsewhere. So the talent exists, and they're very, very talented, and you need them. But, the gaming companies got to put some energy into these communities, and the best way to do it is to go grassroots, like talk to the people in the community.
Do you have a story you'd like to see featured on Voices for Change? Send us an email at newstips@fox.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you missed any of this episode, or you want to see any of it again and our previous shows, head to our website, KTVU.com, and just search Voices for Change. That's our show for the day. Thanks to all of our guests for coming on for these important conversations. And thank you to our team for continuing to believe in this project. And of course, thank you for watching. A reminder, you can catch Voices for Change on the last Sunday of every month right here on KTVU. Have a great day.